Nach den Anschlägen auf Tausende von Bürgern im Libanon vergangene Woche, als Pager und Walkie-Talkies plötzlich zu tödlichen Bomben wurden, hat Israel begonnen, intensiv Ziele im Libanon zu bombardieren. Die libanesischen Behörden berichten von über 500 Toten, ein großer Teil davon Frauen und Kinder, und Tausenden von Verletzten. Die israelische Regierung hingegen behauptet, sie verteidige nur sich selbst gegen die Hisbollah. Wie bewertest du das israelische Vorgehen im Libanon? Sucht Israel tatsächlich einen großen Krieg gegen den Libanon und die Hisbollah? Tötet Israel absichtlich so viele Zivilisten, so viele Frauen und Kinder?
Well, first of all, Israel's always had a policy of collective punishment. So when it targets a political or military adversary, the target deck always includes civilians, almost exclusively so. Part of a theory of collective punishment that by punishing the people, you can have them turn against their political and masters who are, implementing, military-based policies Israel objects to. This, of course, is a gross violation of international law, but Israel's never shied away from carrying out these actions. So it shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody that Israel will primarily target civilians as a mechanism of putting pressure on, in this case, Hezbollah and the Lebanese government, trying to turn the Lebanese government against Hezbollah, turn the Lebanese people against Hezbollah. History shows that this will fail, and it is failing. The Lebanese government is, and Hezbollah is an important member of the Lebanese government. So the Lebanese government has rallied behind Hezbollah and has condemned Israel and views Israel's actions as acts of war that must be responded to by the totality of Lebanon. So in this, Israel has failed. Why did they do this? Is Israel seeking a larger war? No, Israel cannot win a larger war. This was literally a military action carried out to divert the attention of the Israeli public away from the ongoing failures of the Netanyahu government. Netanyahu can only remain in power so long as he is seen as a wartime leader, and therefore he needs more war. But it has to be a war that can be containable, not a war that will result in the crushing defeat of Israel. Here he may have miscalculated. Yes, he carried out a pager attack. It's not really an attack, it's an act of terrorism. But again, Israel is a nation that carries out acts of genocide. So carrying out an act of widespread terror is par for the course. But now he's engaged in this bombing campaign against Hezbollah. But what are the reasons? It's not to defeat Hezbollah. He hasn't announced that objective. It's to create the conditions for the return of 60,000 Israeli settlers in the north who were compelled to flee their homes because of the war of escalation carried out between Israel and Hezbollah over the course of the past year. Netanyahu said that he will return these settlers and that he will compel Hezbollah to stand down. But the opposite has happened. Despite the number of bombs dropped on Lebanon, Hezbollah maintains the ability to continue to strike Israel in the north, expanding its attacks, defeating or overwhelming Israeli anti-missile defense. And so the fact is, not only is Netanyahu failing to get the 60,000 settlers returned to their homes, but there will be thousands more Israelis who will have to evacuate their homes. This has backfired on Netanyahu, and now you see the Israeli government desperately trying to bring an end to this conflict, because I think it realizes that once again, war is an extension of politics by other means, and we can't judge outcomes on the battlefield simply by bombs blowing up on the ground. We have to look at the politics attached to each decision. And in this case, this has backfired on Israel. Rather than returning 60,000 settlers, it looks like there's going to be thousands more leaving their homes, creating an additional political problem for Benjamin Netanyahu.
Lass uns über die Anschläge auf Pager und Walkie-Talkies von vergangener Woche sprechen. Wer steckt dahinter? Ist tatsächlich Israel bzw. der israelische Geheimdienst der Drahtzieher hinter diesen Terroranschlägen? Und wenn ja, wie war es ihnen möglich, so viele Geräte gleichzeitig zur Explosion zu bringen? Befand sich in allen von ihnen Sprengstoff? Wie war der technische Ablauf dieser Anschläge?
Well, I'm a prisoner to the data that we know about. I have not had the opportunity to forensically examine either a destroyed pager or a pager that has, that didn't blow up but still maintains its the characteristics of the booby trap device. But based upon the information that has been published and on some speculation, it appears that Israel was in fact behind this attack, that this was a intelligence-driven operation that was years in the making. There are articles out there that speak of 15 years that Israel has been doing this. I don't know if 15 years is an accurate term, but it would be many years. To do what Israel did requires the ability to create front companies, to create cover stories, because you have to win the confidence of not only the electronic sector that you're trying to become a part of, either through license or some other mechanism, but also the consumers who are going to purchase your devices. You can't just simply come in and out of the blue build something and say, "Hey, we're ready to sell." They got a license. They built a factory. They have employees that come in. They have to convince people that these are legitimate products, especially the procurement agents for Hezbollah. This takes years and years to do. They also have to perfect the device itself, make sure that it works. And to make sure that whatever modifications they made to the device do not disrupt the normal function of the device and are not easily detected by readily detected by somebody who purchases the device. And this, again, takes a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of money. They apparently succeeded in infiltrating these modified pager and walkie-talkie bombs into the ranks of Hezbollah. And then they made them all go off. And then for what purpose? I mean, they spent all this time to build up this capability, and now they've used it, but it didn't have, I think, the impact. It seized headlines for a week. It did inflict casualties, but these aren't crippling casualties, and the chaos and disruption that occurred when all of these devices went off, Hezbollah has recovered from. The military action that followed was delayed and was not decisive. And so that leads you to believe that rather than this very expensive intelligence-driven trick, because that's all, it's a one-time trick, instead of using it as part of the initiating actions for a larger military action, they used it to deflect public attention away from the failures of the Netanyahu regime and the failures of the Netanyahu policies when it comes to Gaza and Hezbollah. This was about domestic politics in Israel. That's it. And they got the headlines they wanted. Netanyahu got to say how tough he was, or at least make people believe how tough he was, because Israel hasn't formally taken credit for this. And now he's bombing Lebanon, and again, posturing. But as I mentioned earlier, it's going to fail because all this military action and military posturing is linked to a policy that's impossible to implement. Netanyahu will not get the 60,000 settlers returned to northern Israel. He's not going to be able to stop Hezbollah from firing rockets into northern Israel. And he's unable to escalate to the level necessary to defeat Hezbollah because he lacks the military resources, and politically the United States have not backed such action. So this whole pager thing, will go down in history as a very curious event, but not a game-changing event from the perspective of Israeli Hezbollah conflict. We have yet to see what impact it has on the global market and the global economy. I think many people are suddenly woken up to the danger electronic devices and their dependence upon these electronic devices, and what happens if other people choose to use these electronic devices as a bomb. How do we go on air travel? Already we see that airliners are prohibiting people from bringing pagers on board or packing them in their bags. What happens when cell phones fall into that category? Israel may have shot itself in the foot because the political and economic consequences of their actions resonate globally and not in a positive way.
Auf den Punkt gefragt. Ist mit den Terroranschlägen auf Pager und Walkie-Talkies eine neue Stufe der Verbindung von digitaler Welt, von Terrorismus und moderner Kriegsführung erreicht? Müssen wir damit rechnen, dass auch unsere Handys, Computer und so weiter zu todbringenden Bomben werden können?
Well, I'm not a bomb-making expert. I know a little bit about it, but I don't know the specific technical specifications. My understanding is that the pager had two modifications. One was with the batteries, a lithium-based battery, where one of the batteries was able to produce power, but the other battery actually had the explosive charge embedded in it. And then within the device itself, which upon activation generated activity that caused the batteries to overheat. And when the battery reached a certain temperature level of activity, it exploded. My understanding is that design required required two batteries to work, one a real battery, one a fake battery. Again, I don't have access to the device. I'm only going off of some forensics that have been published about this. On our phone, we use a single lithium battery. I don't know. I mean, you'd have to modify the battery so that it could both function as a power source and an explosive. They didn't do that in the pagers. I'd be interested to see if the walkie-talkies were also powered by lithium AA batteries, in using a similar power explosive configuration. But if they ever mastered the ability to create a battery that looks like a singular battery, but is in fact, it looks like a single lithium block, but inside you have two functions. One is one that powers the phone. The other one is the one that is an explosive on standby. Then you could do the same thing with a phone and blow it up. So, yeah, we should all worry about this, and we should all condemn Israel about this. The world should condemn Israel about this, and we need to make this a crime. This is something that impacts the global community. When you take a device that is an integral part of the daily lives of everybody in the world today, the cell phone. I mean, this is a computing device. This is an information device. This is a communication device. It has taken over how we live our lives. And then you turn it into a potential weapon. You are attacking civil society globally. And this is Israel. Israel did this. And Israel should be condemned for this and held to account for this and called upon to pay the price for this. And yet there's silence. So we don't see, indictments going forward, et cetera. We'll see how this resonates. Maybe the addiction to mobile communications is such that people will overlook the fact that they might be carrying a bomb in their pockets or holding it next to their heads. We'll see what the future holds. But this was a very dangerous action on the part of Israel.
Schauen wir nach Europa. Der ukrainische Präsident Wladimir Selenskij hat jüngst sein Konzept gegenüber dem Westen vorgelegt, wie der Ukraine-Krieg mit einem Sieg der Ukraine beendet werden kann. Selenskij spricht von einem Siegesplan. Demnach sollen die Kriegshandlungen in absehbarer Zeit abgeschlossen werden. Friedensverhandlungen mit Russland seien nicht notwendig. Russland hingegen betont, dass jeder Krieg irgendwann mit Frieden endet. Es gebe jedoch keine Alternative dazu, dass Russland seine selbst gesteckten Ziele erreichen werde. Wie siehst du den Siegesplan von Selenskij? Kann die Ukraine den Krieg siegreich beenden?
No, Ukraine has lost this war. Ukraine knows it's lost this war. Europe knows it's lost this war. NATO knows it's lost this war. The United States knows it's lost this war. This is just an act of political theater by President Selenskij. Nobody takes his plan seriously. Nobody has taken this plan seriously. He tried to sell it to the media, and they said there is no plan here. None of his allies buy into this plan. To the extent that anybody, can be seen as supporting this plan, nations still say that they must continue to support Ukraine. The United States still, President Biden spoke at the General Assembly yesterday and talked about the need for a Ukrainian victory. But notice that Biden's talk about a Ukrainian victory did not constitute an endorsement of the insanity of the plan that Volodymyr Zelensky is marketing. It's a theoretical path to victory, not a real path to victory. No one has a real path to victory. Zelensky's plan is not a real path to victory. The Russians have a real path to victory, and they're embarked on it right now. It's called slaughtering the Ukrainian troops in the field, destroying the Ukrainian equipment, advancing, taking territory, and getting Ukraine ready to freeze to death this winter by taking out the electrical grid and power, sources of power. The Russians will dictate the terms of surrender to Ukraine. That's how this war ends. That's the only way this war ends. And I think you're seeing a growing shift in the opinion of European nations and the United States, a more realistic shift that recognizes that Russia cannot be defeated, that Russia is not going to lose this war, that Russia is going to win this war. In fact, former President Donald Trump made just that statement. He says we talk about the need to, for Ukraine to win, but what happens when that doesn't happen? What happens when Russia wins? And Russia is going to win. There's nothing that can happen that can take Russia off this course. The West has run out of money, run out of munitions, run out of equipment, run out of support within Europe itself. We're starting to see people turn to Germany. Once we're going to stand with Ukraine to the end. We're there, buddy. We got your back. Don't worry about it. We're going to support you even if the German people don't want it. Well, the German people are speaking. In election after election after election, the ruling coalition is being trounced so badly now that Olaf Scholz has had to basically say, we're not giving you Taurus missiles and we reject your peace plan. This is a political reality in Czech Republic, which has a very anti-Russian, pro-Ukrainian president. We've seen elections where the people are saying, no, we don't support this. This is happening throughout Europe. This is a tide that cannot be reversed. Ukraine will lose this war. Europe will abandon Ukraine. The United States will abandon Ukraine, and Russia will emerge victorious. That's the reality. And no Zelensky plan can change that.
Die ukrainischen Streitkräfte scheinen vor einer sehr ernsten Lage zu stehen. Sie werden nicht nur im Donbass und aus Kursk weiter zurückgedrängt, es droht ihnen auch ein empfindlicher Mangel an Kriegsgeräten. Laut Medienberichten sind die meisten gelieferten westlichen Panzer und Haubitzen mittlerweile zerstört. So sollen allein vom US-Panzer M1 Abrams mittlerweile über 20 der 31 gelieferten Modelle zerstört, verloren oder unbrauchbar geworden sein. Wird der Westen für Ersatz sorgen? Werden die NATO-Staaten die Ukraine weiter aufrüsten?
I think the West will continue to provide funding support and weapons support to Ukraine because, again, we don't care about Ukraine. That's the irony of it. What we care about is weakening Russia. And tragically, we are willing to fight Russia to the last Ukrainian. Well, that's happening, and Russia will win. And when that happens, we will have to deal with the consequences of our actions and the consequences of a Russian victory. But too much political capital has been expended into supporting Ukraine to see these politicians just do an about face. Germany appears to be the only one, but that's because Scholz is facing total political irrelevance, largely because of his Ukraine policy and the economic consequences of sanctioning Russia. But other European powers are being similarly confronted with the fact that nobody supports this war anymore. Nobody supports Ukraine. But we have, for instance, Sweden is very aggressive in providing hundreds of millions of dollars worth of equipment, and we have other nations willing to provide this equipment. But this is not war-winning equipment. This is not game-changing stuff. This is just equipment that's going to be destroyed by Russia in conflict. And remember, it's not just about destroying the tank, but it's about killing the crew. It's not just destroying the infantry fighting vehicle. It's about killing the crew and the passengers inside. All this equipment that is sent to Ukraine is attached to human lives that are going to be lost. So the more equipment that the West provided to Ukraine, the larger the casualties will be of the Ukrainian soldiers. And this just hastens Russian victory. It makes Ukraine even weaker because Ukraine can't absorb this equipment. They don't have the troops trained. And so, you go through the motions of creating a unit that looks good on paper, but as soon as it enters into combat, it gets destroyed and it's eliminated. You might as well not have even bothered creating that. And you just weaken the West. They drain their arsenals. We're at the point now where there's just nothing left to give because it's all been given.
Laut Medienberichten steht Russland kurz davor, Zugang zu einem Hafen vor der afrikanischen Westküste zu erlangen. Demnach soll der Inselstaat São Tomé und Príncipe bereit sein, Russland einen seiner Häfen auf unbestimmte Zeit zu überlassen. Zwischen den beiden Staaten existieren auch Abkommen über militärische und militärlogistische Kooperation. Was bedeutet der Zugang zu einem Hafen in Westafrika für die russische Strategie in Afrika? Was bedeutet es für die russischen Partner in Afrika? Und wie wird der Westen darauf reagieren?
Well, I mean, it's the United States has access to ports all around the world, and it gives America the ability to project power. We have a Navy that's built on the absolute need to project power. Russia doesn't have a similar naval organization. A single port in West Africa is more of a political move as opposed to representing a serious military expansion of Russian capability. The port will be able to service Russian ships that go to West Africa, but in any large-scale conflict between the United States and Russia, this port is far removed from Russia, very difficult to logistically sustain and easily neutralized in time of combat. So it's not a game changer. It's done for politics, but I think it's also reflective of the fact that Russia is winning the geopolitical battle in Africa. This port is a symptom of the collapse of Western influence in Africa and the rise of Russian influence. And that's what's more important, is that the African continent is shifting away out of the Western orbit into a multipolar orbit where Russia, China, and other nations, have greater sway.
Das Thema Afrika beschäftigt auch die westlichen Medien. Es gibt dort zahlreiche Warnungen, dass Russland und China Europa aus Afrika verdrängen, dass die beiden Nationen die neuen Kolonialmächte werden könnten. Teilst du diese Sorge? Oder siehst du im Vorgehen Russlands und Chinas in Afrika alternative Ansätze für den Kontinent?
Well, remember that the European presence in Africa is a direct result of, centuries of colonial abuse of Africa and neo-colonial abuse of Africa. France-Afrique, the French presence in Africa, that emerged after the end of the French Empire in 1960, was an extension of colonial rule. They just called it something different. Let's take a look at what Russia and China are doing. Russia has hosted a Russia-Africa summit every year. The African countries come there willingly, and they work with Russia on a collaborative and cooperative basis. China just finished hosting an economic forum, an African-Chinese economic forum where, again, scores of African leaders came to China to work with Chinese collaboratively. You don't see the Africans complaining about this relationship. Why? Because it's not a neo-colonial relationship. It's not a colonial relationship. It's a relationship of partners. And that's the difference between how Russia and China approach working with sovereign African states. They don't seek to suppress them, oppress them, occupy them, or dominate them. They're there to find a mutually beneficial relationship based primarily upon economic concerns rather than trying to impose a security-driven framework on them like the United States and NATO and the European Union have tried. So I'll let the Africans speak for themselves, and so far they appear to have spoken by willingly engaging Russia and China on this new direction that they're embarked on.
Wird sich der Westen, werden sich die alten Kolonialmächte einfach so aus Afrika zurückziehen und das Feld Russland und China überlassen? Oder werden sie alles in Bewegung setzen, um über Regime-Changes afrikanische Nationen gegen Russland und China zu drehen und so selbst wieder ihren Einfluss auszubauen?
Look, the United States has the Central Intelligence Agency, which has the Special Missions Center, which is tasked with doing a number of things. And one of their missions is to carry out coups d'états against governments that we find inconvenient to our strategic vision. The CIA has always been very active in Africa, and I would imagine the CIA will continue to be active in Africa. And the CIA will be called upon to, intervene and undermine and destabilize governments that we deem to be unfriendly or unsupportive of the United States. The bad news for the CIA is that it tended to exploit the neo-colonial reality of Africa. To get its job done. But now that Africa is sort of inoculated itself against neocolonialism by embarking on, reality-based relationships with Russia and China, the CIA is not going to have the same ability to infiltrate and exploit divisions, etc. There's no doubt in my mind that the United States will seek to carry out campaigns designed to interfere with Russia and Chinese ambitions in Africa, but there's also no doubt in my mind that the CIA will fail in every single one of these.
Liebe Zuschauer, wenn euch unsere Beiträge gefallen, teilt sie unbedingt in den sozialen Medien. Abonniert unseren Kanal und drückt auf die Glocke, damit ihr keine Veröffentlichung von Gegenpol verpasst.